also need to do is to de-link our minds from those who are higher up, who prescribe to us how life should be lived. Because frankly, we don't live in North America. I'm not a European, and I don't want to be a European, and I'll never be one. So the cultural thinking that is embedded in my mind is that of an African. And I reason from me to my parents, to my relatives, to community. We need a church in this country that is community-driven, community-oriented, and community service-focused. In other words, I should not say that because you are a Catholic, you are not part of me. You see, denominationalism led to the restructuring of the African community. We now define one another not as so and so who lives in such and such a place, but as a member of this, a member of that. So Christianity has become a political platform.
I hear that, Mfundis. I still want us to then say, so we are now this community here at Kelvin. There's an abused and there's an abuser.
Fine.
And the abuser is known. Senzan.
He must be spoken to. He needs to be approached. Not only with an allegation or accusation, valid or invalid, but with the possibility, also with a program to heal the person from unjustified guilt if he is not guilty. And both of them are ill. The abuser and the victim are ill. The other one has a wrong paradigm of what it means to be human. The other one has been injured by the wrong paradigm of the other person. The agent of evil. Right. I think that's one of the things we need to. We need to set up new programs now of healing people. And the abuse might not be physical or sexual. It might occur in different ways. So we need a program now. We need a program, new program at all. A program that we shall institutionalize. Let's tap into the skills that are in the church, the education that is in the church. It's of no use for us to be professionals during the week and then sink into something sub-academic on Sabbath.
I think generally when perpetrator has done something, most people condemn the perpetrator. And so most of the times you find that there's little help for perpetrators. And even the programs that have been designed, they are actually meant to help victims mostly. But it is important to realize that if we don't address that can rehabilitate him, then our problems actually become worse. So the most important thing is when we approach the perpetrator, we want him to be rehabilitated. We want him to be transformed. But remember, for the perpetrator to be where he is something that started way long back, maybe years ago when they were a child or somewhere there in their lives. So it is important also to realize that even those programs must be structured in such a way that to rehabilitate this person, it might need some time. In some research, it actually shows that they actually need about 40 weeks to rehabilitate a difficult perpetrator. So 40 weeks, when you look at it, it's actually like conceiving a child and delivering after 9 months. So it's almost 9 months. So it's like you are putting that person in a womb where they have to be fed, where they have to get nutrients until the 9 months is up, and then they can be delivered and become a new baby. So it's important for us to remember that they can also be rehabilitated, and their rehabilitation will transform even the community, and people will appreciate that.
Is it practical, though, to be able to say, so we'll take care of you who's been abused and you who's been abuser, all here, all together? Is it, so every time I come to church or there's a church function, I see my abuser who's being rehabilitated? What is that doing to my own healing?
It depends with the stage of the abuse. yes, the abuser could be our church member, but is he still coming to church, or they're actually in prison? It depends where they are. So you take it from the point where the perpetrator is. They could be in prison, and in prison they can have rehabilitation services there. And while they are being rehabilitated, the victim also needs assistance, needs support, needs counseling, needs a lot of things that have gone wrong in the family. So this is just something general. It's not necessarily that maybe the abuser is in the church, or it could be that the abuser is also coming to church. And that is very crucial in that because if they are coming together, maybe they are living together. I'm trying to imagine that they are living together. So it would mean that we talk to the perpetrator and also speak to the victim, and the victim has to say what they want. We don't have to force things on the victim. Like the church will say, once you are married, you have to die together. It's not like that. You don't have to die for the perpetrator. So it's important for the church also. So the influence of the church on what they say maybe to the victim or perpetrator will actually help us in managing the situation.
One of the reasons raised by people who don't report abuse or don't come forward is because then they feel like, well, nothing happens, or people will get away with it. I'll report to the elders that brother so-and-so touched me in an inappropriate way, and then the brethren will want to, make nice. And then every time I'm coming here, brother is standing up here doing announcements, and so what's the point? And so a lot of people, especially in church communities, then feel, unless it's like drastic, like he beat me up or raped me, it's not really taken as abuse because we haven't really defined it that way. And so people don't come forward because it's not something he's going to go to jail for, but it's still abuse, right?
Yes.
So there's that struggle of, am I really going to get the support that I need, or is it now going to show the perpetrator that actually I don't even have support, because even when I report it, nothing happens to them? I haven't heard of any situation of, I know people get disfellowship for babies, but I've never heard anyone disfellowship for abuse. Does that happen in Fundis?
I've never seen that. And most of the time it's treated by some isolated individuals who might be friends or who are called to a situation, and then a non-verbalized or non-documented vow is made, that pledge that this thing should be kept under the carpet. And so people live with the injury for decades until they die.
But that happens in our families as well.
Unfortunately, which is why I want to make a proposal that we move away from structure as organization to what I would call recreative spirituality. Human beings need to be reborn. We need to approach humanity with the mind to rebirth them. Because frankly, we're not fine. We're not in good shape. So we need to develop a recreative spirituality in the church, and it must be multidisciplinary. There needs to be an enforced curriculum. Every department needs to be sure that it is centered around human development and human welfare.
All right.
All departments should be service departments. Mm-hmm. We need to move away from controlling assets, but to servicing people.
Do we also not have a responsibility of practical things like reporting the person to the police when we hear about it?
That's also necessary. But the church should also play a role in redeeming, because we may report the matter to the police and the juridical processes will follow. The person will end up in jail if he's found guilty and sentenced. And so you have your prison ministry dealing with that person. But in the prison, they don't deal with abuse. They deal with rehabilitation. Churches just go there to preach Sabbath keeping or whatever other things they preach. And I know people who have not been healed of their criminality long after they were weaned from one as souls in prison ministries. I know one in Sweat Forest that I've often wondered about. I often say to my, what happened to that guy? He no longer sings in a particular group. What happened to him? Is he, and one of them defected to another group of, and I wanted, and I've been saying to myself, let me make a statement that perhaps does not belong to this program. The church is fractured. That is why I can heal those who are fractured. We need to fix the church first before it can fix its own membership. Because I think we are harmed as an institution. That's why we cannot fix the members of the institution. There needs to be a restructuring.
Because I think, and we want to bring it in here, it really is difficult to then say, okay, yes, we're a safe space, you can bring your challenges here, and then I still need to coexist with my challenges here. And same thing as you said, it's someone I live with at home. So it almost begs the question of what's the point of even raising it if I'm still going to be stuck in the same situation that I'm stuck in. And I think we lack practical application of the support that we're wanting to give, right? So something as basic as, should we be building shelters as churches?
I think it's important to realize that we, even as a church, we don't live in isolation. We have structures that have been established by governments. For me, I think we should use those structures. For example, the police. If somebody is actually being abused, they are crying and calling for help, we call for the police to come in, because when the police comes in, at least in that immediate situation, the situation will be actually brought under control. So it is important to be aware of those structures that we need. And also, we should be each other's keeper. We should be each other's keeper. At times, the person is not even able to say anything, but you can identify that there is a problem. You should be able to approach them and listen to what they say and believe them, because most people will always say, why is she not leaving? Why is she staying in that situation? But we are not asking this important question to say, why is he not stopping it? So most of the times the blame is on the perpetrator, whereby the perpetrator must stop whatever he's doing. So we are always asking a question about the victim, why the victim is not leaving, the perpetrator is not stopping this. So there are so many structures, because when you ask questions, you begin to have new thoughts and new ideas of how to manage the situation. If you are saying, why is he not stopping it? You need to think further than that and say, what can we do to make this man stop?
I like that. We need to ask the right questions.
Yes.
We need to ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
Mfundis, is the Bible complicit in this abuse? Because, I mean, some of the things that we read in the Bible and the way they're handled doesn't really...
The Bible is not complicit as a text, but some of its practitioners have become complicit in evil. Silently, some of it is hidden. People are given threats. Some are bribed, even within the church. Some people who are in leadership ignore these things because they're done by bosom friends. But the greatest harm that we've caused to members is to undermine the hurt, the injury. Which is one of the reasons why some people leave and never come back. Yeah, when I hurt and I tell you that I'm hurting, it's time for you to start jumping. If you can't, invite somebody else to fix it. So, one of the unfortunate things is that some of the people we might expect help from are themselves hurting. For instance, I would not go to everybody in the church, everybody in my home. I only go to those that I know will cry with me. You get the point? The English say kissing goes by favor, right? But here is I'm bothered by the fact that we are bringing a new epistemic model into an archaic structure. So we need to change the structure plus its content. Yeah.
And why I'm asking, that's why I asked the Bible and not the structure, is because I'm trying to think of examples of abuse in the Bible and how they're handled. And I really can't see resolution that I think would work for us. So, for example, I'm thinking of is it Dinah, David's daughter, who was raped by the brother? Nothing happened there. Nothing happened to Tamar. In fact, isn't it in Leviticus where it says if a man rapes a woman, he must marry her? Like, those are the examples I'm thinking of. You mentioned cities of refuge. Cities of refuge were for the criminals, not the abused. So what's the resolution that the Bible gives us about helping those who are, apart from the blanket, come to me, all who you labor? I'm now saying practically, I don't, and maybe I'm missing something. I'm not seeing examples in the Bible that are, we know how to deal with sin because it's very clear in the Bible, but is it maybe that it's by implication?
I've never thought about the question you're raising. I want to approach it from a particular angle. What do we do? Because I think we are searching for what do we do. We need answers to a formula, or answers that will surround a formula. A congregation could set up a new department. A congregation could set up a new department, a department that straddles into the issues of other departments. Deacons, for instance, should not be collecting money. They should be taking care of souls. We've given them technical jobs that have nothing to do. They're not accountants, some of them. Which is why sometimes they count the money and the money gets lost. Because they're not doing their work. The function of a deacon is people related, not thing related. Deacons have become managers of assets in the church instead of managers of souls. You get the point? So we have redefined and underdefined and misdefined functionaries in the church. And that's why we become highly impersonal. I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to be involved. Tandy, did you hear how Tandy beat her daughter? But why did she do it? We engage in academic analysis of a problem we should be helping to solve. Yes. So my proposition is that we need a model that will restructure the institution into a community. We need to move from institution to community. The biblical communities, the biblical Jews were communities rather than organizations.
In the biblical
They become institutionalized in the New Testament when the disciples go around setting up churches and so on and appointing deacons and elders.
I think just to add something on that, like on the issue of Dana, when that rape occurred, you find that the father was helpless. He just sat back. I expected David to do something about it. And so the brothers took the matter in their own hands. And so even in church, when we don't do something about a situation, someone is going to take matters in their own hands, and the situation will even be worse. So we need, when there are issues, we need to do something about it. Let's talk about it and act. There must be action to show that we realize the dangers that we are faced with. We cannot just watch, we cannot just sit back like Pastor is saying. We need that transformation. We need to do something. We need to act. Because it's a matter of life and death.
Could I add something, Sister Andy? We need to also to move away from the childish and false notion that when somebody gets converted and comes to no, not converted. Conversion is a lifetime process. It does not happen once. Yeah, it takes place over a period of time. Sometimes you discover that your earlier conversion was faulty. You need to take a totally different route in your conversion movement. We have over allowed ourselves to be lax about what it means to be a member of the body of Jesus Christ. It's about spending 6 months in a baptismal class, saying yes to 27 statements or 28 statements, and then getting into the church and getting elected after a year or two. highly structural, and it does not help, does not deal with the soul. The result is that even the pulpit in the Adventist church is not fixing these things. It is meant for me to show how my homiletic prowess, how I interpret the Bible. Highly structural. It has nothing to do with saving people. People in the church today, particularly in the urban areas, the educated class is impressed by elocution, by factuality, by argumentation, by delivery. Those are the things we want to see in a sermon. But the question is, were we saved after that sermon? No, we're not saved. And pastors have also been deceived into thinking that elocution is the thing they must display behind the pulpit. Language expertise, understanding the scriptures. Get the point? How many pastors have come here but don't know where we live? Don't know where we live. They don't know where we live. They only meet us here and that's the end. Some of them have sometimes meet us in meetings and say, by the way, who are you? Jesus would never have said that. By the way, who are you? I think I saw in a wedding. No. We've not done what Jesus did with humanity. Perhaps the reason is that it is not us who lost humanity. It is God who lost humanity. That is why he had to send his son here, not only to live, but ultimately to die. Jesus experienced the whole gamut of human existence. He was born and he died.
Sure. In the last few minutes that we have, I think I'm harping on this point because it appears, and I'm saying it appears, that the purpose, the function of the church is for the repentance of the wrongdoer, and we don't really then look at the one that the wrong was done to.
Okay.
So if we deal with the sinner and the sinner repents and they find Jesus, then it should be fine. But we don't actually still say, but there's harm that was done to other. And how are we dealing with the harm that was done to other? And it goes back to my previous point of saying that's probably why then many of the other who are being abused will not report it, because at the most you'll talk to them and they must repent and then they'll say, I'll never do it again. But there's no clear consequences and clear actions that are seen being taken by this community that I'm supposed to be part of. So that, and even as I'm saying this, I'm like, it sounds worldly, but I want to see consequences. If I come and I report that somebody did something to me, I wasn't reporting for the sake of you will be able to do something for me about it. And it feels that we don't have that element. At the most, we will rehabilitate the abuser. We'll pray for them, we'll convert them, we'll help them to change. But we don't have anything deliberate that addresses the harm that's been done to the one that was harmed. I don't know if I'm making sense.
I hear you. We need to create mechanisms now for fixing both the victim and the abuser. Because the victim is also, the abuser is also a victim. You might find in the long run, on deeper examination, that the agent is more harmed than the victim.
But not by me.
By circumstances in his or her life, yes.
So now only history but now he's come and dumped that on me, creating another cycle in me, and I'm likely to pass that on to someone else as well.
Okay, the point.
Right? So it's, yes, shame, sorry, you had an abusive childhood and all of that, but it's not for me to then be the recipient of that playing out. So as much as we want to understand that someone's childhood and someone's own history of abuse has led them to where they are, it doesn't absolve them of the responsibility of the harm they're inflicting on the person in front of them.
I think when the victim comes to us, he or she is, because it can also be a male, he or she is crying for help. Whenever a child is crying for help, most of the times we give them attention. If we take it that way to say, if my child is crying, all of us will rush and see what's happening, and we'll ask, what can we do? And we'll investigate who did this and what can be done. But with us, we seem to be lethargic on such issues. Someone is crying for help, and we don't take it seriously. At times, we even blame them. At times, we even doubt them. And all these things they don't need. They need our support. They need us to be there. They need us to listen to them. At times, we don't even give them a listening ear. So it is important to sit and listen. And when you listen, somebody will begin to trust you and say, let me go to this person because they can listen. They are used to the perpetrator who doesn't even listen to them. So when we don't listen, we are just like the perpetrator. So we need to make that difference, even in small ways, to say, we are here for you. What can we do?
So I think as we start wrapping up, because we're running out of time, it's really about, I think for me, it really is about understanding that we need to be deliberate about creating safe spaces. We really need to. We need to be deliberate about creating safe spaces in ourselves as a church community, in our families as well. We need to create spaces where someone knows that they can run somewhere, that city of refuge, when they need help. But we also need spaces where someone who's likely to abuse knows that they're not going to get away with it in this community if it actually happens, because this space is not, it's not okay in this space. And I think maybe we're missing that. We're missing that sense of, you can't do that here. Not. I mean, there's a movement in South Africa, I think it's by men, called Not in My Name. And it's really about that. People must know that not in your presence, they can't do that. But right now they seem to be getting away with it because they can.
One of the things that I think has crippled the Christian church, we have read everything as a crime. Every wrong is a crime. Sin is not a crime. It cannot be defined by human law. Sin is rebellion against the order of the universe. And because of that, we need spiritual or theological formulas for dealing with the rot in us. I might have committed an act of abuse last week, but you might find that it is not abuse that is the fundamental problem. I'm dislocated theologically, spiritually. I'm living a life which manifests itself in the abuse of the other. So I need to be fixed at a very foundational epistemic point. And perhaps these discussions should lead us to a total re-examination of the history of mission, the history of the church, history of how we have done, try to solve problems and adapt a new model. I totally agree with the madam here that we need to go deeper into the psychology of both the victim and the abuser.
And as we wrap up, what we didn't even touch on was, how do we support those who are supporting the people who are directly involved? So my support structure also needs support. If I'm abused and I'm coming to you all the time and I'm talking to you, I'm offloading that trauma onto you. You need an outlet for that offloading as well, for that trauma as well. And so we need to look at the whole structure surrounding this incident, not just the person involved in the abuse, or even just the perpetrator, because the perpetrator is also coming from a community, from a family, from people who see him more than just as a perpetrator. And so what happens to them as well? Where does this actually place them? Sure, so this is deeper than just, I feel like we've just touched the surface, really, as it is. Let's wrap up, because we've run out of time. Let's wrap up. What are we actually saying? Just as a practical starting point, what are we saying? What would be the thing that would trigger the turnaround for us as the Calvin community? I'll start with you, ma'am, and then I'll come to you, Mfundisi.
Okay. I would like to say that, be that someone that the other person can run to for help, and be willing to help as much as you can. Maybe you can also look for support structures. At times you are not sure of what to do, but also look for help somewhere to say, I have this person, what can I do? So be that person who is willing to help others when they are in trouble.
Thank you, ma'am. Mfundisi.
We need to assist members to live on the basis of their giftedness. Because in the kingdom, we function on the basis of gifts. And once that is set, there will be plenty to do to sort out the human tradition challenge.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to both of you. And what I'm taking away from all of, not isolated to the person suffering the abuse or the abuser, but it's actually our problem, and we need to, as a community, approach it and find solutions that are permanent to approaching it. And I'd like to thank everyone at home for watching. Just to say that there are resources available, as Umama Ping has already said. We're not in isolation as a church. We're part of a community. We're part of a city. We're part of a government. And there's structures that are in place that are freely available for us to tap into whilst we're fixing ours here at church. So don't be shy to reach out to them. And we've given you some numbers that will come up on the screen as we finish off. Please do not sit back and suffer in silence. And please do not sit back and watch someone else suffer in silence. If you see it happening, or if it's happening to you, put up your hand and let something, raise an alarm, let something actually happen. And if you're the one who's doing the abuse, know that as well, that there is help for you as well. So please reach out and get that support. Thank you so much for following us in this series. We have spoken so much about what needs to happen, and I think we want to take action. So we will be taking this conversation forward into practically putting into place structures, education, awareness sessions. So this is not the end of it, it's just the end of it for now. If you have any suggestions, any comments, anything you'd like to add, please continue to send us your information to share with us and continue this conversation wherever you are. So from myself, from our panel, please enjoy the rest of the first season. Please be safe, and we would like to see you again next year. Bye for now.